All right, what to do with this Walmart? Well, hello, Shiny Crafty People. It's Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. I did in my last video go to Walmart and bought some pre-cut fabrics, and today I'm going to turn these pre-cut fabrics into this fantastic bag. I don't know if I can get far enough back to show you. It's even got a pocket. So anyway, this is super easy, and it's a good beginner project. Not maybe the very, very first beginner, but maybe like after you've mastered at least some little bit basics of sewing and how to stay along a specific line or do a 1/4 inch seam. So why don't we go down to the cutting table and I'll show you what it takes to make this bag. All right, so to make this bag, here's the design of the bag that we're doing. And it's gonna be about finished. It's gonna be about 16 inches wide, maybe a little bit less, about 14 inches wide, and about 20 something inches tall when it's finished, but I'll show you what I'm gonna do. So we gotta do two things. We gotta cut a lining piece. That's gonna be out of the solid black, and it's going to be 22 by 44. Now 44 just happens to be the width of the fabric, which is smart, so I'm gonna cut that out. And I have cut that piece out. I already have it here ready to go. That's ready. Then for the outer piece here, I'm gonna need a number of components. I'm gonna need a black piece that is 22 by 8. So I have that piece cut out here, 22 by 8. Okay, that's one of them, times 1. Then I'm gonna need 2 long straps. Now these are 5, I'm actually gonna do 6 inches. I should change that. I decided to change this to 6 by 50, 6 by 50. And that's this piece here. This has already been cut and folded. So here's a piece that hasn't been cut and folded, 6 by 50. But this one I went ahead and folded it into 4s. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. But this is folded to make a nice thick strap with a little bit of strength to it. And then for the other fabric, the accent fabric, I'm gonna need a piece for a pocket, and that's gonna be 8 by 16. So that is here. Now I've actually already folded this in half. So it's already basically, it's gonna make an 8-inch square. That's there. So that will go in this area right here. And then I need 2 of these, and those are 22 by 19. And I've already cut those out here, 22 by 19. Now I was originally thinking about using some interfacing. You'll see there's like a bit of a sticky side on this side. It might be not that easy to see in the light here, but I was going to interface that and give it some weight and stability, but I realized that since I'm making this video off of fabrics you can buy at Walmart, this roll of interfacing isn't actually available at Walmart, and I didn't buy other interfacing, so I'm just going to set it aside and not worry about it specifically. This will be a nice soft floppy bag. Now I do suggest that you wash and press all of your fabrics in advance, so I went ahead and did that to see about color fastness. Everything seemed to be nice and color fast. I didn't lose a bunch of color in the wash. I did wash them separately so I wouldn't get any black bleed over, but now I feel comfortable that the black has been washed really well. So let's go ahead and get started how we lay this entire thing out. And well, actually before we do the layout, I want to go ahead and show you how to make these handles, the handle material. So what I'm going to do is get rid of all of the other pieces out of my way. And I have my long handle fabric. And what I'm gonna do is basically, I'm just gonna fold this in half and iron it. So I've just folded right along, and I'm gonna press it to get that crease in, just to give me a guideline where to fold it again as we keep going forward. Now, I like doing this rather than turning a tube because I feel like this makes it there's a lot more, I'm very positive it's gonna be the exact same width all the way down the entire thing. So again, this goes pretty quickly. I like a lot of steam. You'll hear that. Hear that going off on this machine. I love a lot of steam, but you don't have to use that much. And you can use this kind of iron, or you could use a much bigger iron, does not matter. Now that we open that up, you can see that there is a crease line in there, and I'm just gonna fold each side just into that crease, just where it barely touches into that crease. And you can use just a little finger press if you want to. You don't wanna lose that crease as you go down, because you're gonna fold again on that. So I'll push each of these sides in. I don't want to overlap them. Don't overlap them. And then I'll come along and press each side. Now you'll see I'm not going over the original crease. I'm not like going this way. I'm going to where I don't run over the original crease. That's going to be important to me because I'm going to need that original crease left over. So I'll keep folding this in. Again, you can just use a finger press if you choose to. Press with your fingers. And then hit it again with the actual iron. I keep hitting my head on this camera. Right, one last pull of it. You want to get it awfully close to the center if you can, so this will line up and be the exact same height or the same width all the way through. All right, and then we go back through and we basically fold it over back onto itself and just now give it a good press all the way down. And when you do that, it should line up perfectly along the other edge. See, it should line up really well along here. And then we'll actually stitch this whole thing together. Oh, fantastic. So that has been completed. We have now 2 of those done. Now we're going to lay out our pieces. Now, remember here, one of the things to look at on our main plan is that in this center piece, I'm actually going to make this set first and this set over here before I get to that point, before I get this middle part put in, because I want to make sure that that I can trap the ends of the handles inside that seam between that black piece and the other accent piece. So what I will do is lay out my accent piece. Let me go ahead and take the cutting mat or the ironing mat away. Now, the 22 inches goes across the width of this. So this is going to be the bottom. This is where it's going to connect to the black portion, and the 22 inches is the width of the piece. So you'll notice that it's wider. This side is not as wide as this side. So this side here is the short side. You can also measure it 19 inches if you wanted to. And then what I'm going to do is find the center of this, and there's a couple of ways to do that, but for me the simplest way is going to be basically just to fold it in half. So I will fold it in half and maybe put a pin in at the halfway point. And all of this is going to let me do is figure out where is my pocket going to go. So remember, this is the pocket that I made, and I'll do the same thing on the pocket. I'll just fold it in half. I had folded it over. So I've got a finished edge here where it just folded over. And then I'll find the center of this. If you wanted to be real over the top with this, you could have made sure you cut your fabric so that it lines up when you finish, when you're putting it together. In other words, when you put this on top, it'll line up perfectly so that all these lines match, but it's not gonna work that way for this one. I'm not bothered by it. So now I've got the folded edge up here because that's where my pocket's gonna go in. So I can go ahead and clip that in place. You could pin it as well since I already have pins in here, but I will go ahead and just clip this in place and then probably put a couple pins. Now I can take those pins out, put a couple pins up further. I won't need to sew across this, so I can put pins as close as I want to the top of that. It will not hurt anything. And then my next step is to put my handles on. So here are my handles, and those are going to go in this direction. Now I want you to see that the handles, because I only cut them at 50, they're not super tall. You'll notice they're not going to go way above this particular bag. Now, if you wanted them to go a lot higher on the bag, you could shorten this distance, the 19-inch distance if you wanted to, but it would make the whole bag, you'd need to cut the lining as well. I'm gonna stick with this because I kind of like the idea of this being a bag, because you're also gonna fold down a little bit at the top here. So I'm not terribly worried about it. And then I just need to figure out where I'm gonna trap this bag in. So what I'm gonna do is basically run it right through the middle of this line. I will go ahead and put that right down through the middle of it. And I'm gonna have to do some pins. I really can't clip this, because there's no way to clip where I am. So I'll pin this through, and then I'm gonna stitch it down on both sides. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now, I originally was taught, now what I wanna do is at the top I wanna make sure this is properly laying, that it's not twisted up here. So it's not, it's gonna go and lay down. Now, one of the things that you might wanna look at when you do this, I could have made these straps a little longer, maybe like 5 inches longer, which was my original plan. And I should have done that. I just didn't budget my material the right way. So I wasn't able to. I didn't want to have a seam in the middle. So that caused me a little bit of a problem here. And again, I'm going to make sure I've just centered it along. I'm just looking at here, I'm just centering that along. I'm going to sew on either side of this black strap, so I'm not worried about, I know I'm going to catch that pocket, and there's going to be no raw seams. Okay, so that is in place, properly in place. And I'm only gonna sew here and down. I'll sew up, across and down, up, across and down. And then these will be left open until I figure out how far up I'm gonna go and if I need to trim this at all. I'm gonna do that on this side. Now I need to copy this on the other side, but I'm not putting a pocket on the other side. So the way I'm gonna do is just lay it right on top here, just like this, to where I can see it. I can still see, well, you can't see it. I'm gonna lay it on top where I can still see these handles down below. And I've put the fold on the inside, so I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. Put the fold here on the inside. Now I'm gonna line it up using that as my guide. It's gonna be super easy to do that. And then just make sure you don't pin through every bit of the layers. Like, you only wanna pin through the handle and the strap. And I'm just gonna feel down below and make sure. Now I think I'm gonna do a little bit, something I just told you I wasn't gonna do, but I think I am going to. I think I am gonna go in and figure out whether I've done the math correctly, because I wanna see actually how far I should, if I need to cut this accent fabric at all. And it might be that I did the accent fabric too big. I'm gonna double check here in just a minute. The way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna lay out all of the, I'm gonna lay out the lining and then these two pieces and that center piece and see if I've done the math correctly. And if I haven't done the math correctly, then I can make a few adjustments and it'll be a lot easier. So I have those two pieces done. I'm gonna give you a little more zoom out here so you can see me lay this entire thing out. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. Both of these will be out of the way for a minute. I'm gonna take my lining fabric. This is always a good thing if you're playing with something and you haven't really gotten all the details and you think you have the math right. I like the idea of just double checking it. I don't think that hurts anybody to double check. Okay, so I'm gonna lay out my lining fabric, which is 44 by 22. I'm gonna lay that out. And because I cut this right on the, after I folded it over and ironed it, now I have a straight line in the middle, so I know where that is. I can easily put my other piece, this is the piece that's gonna go right across the middle. And then I can put these two pieces that are 19 by 22. And you'll notice that they pretty much, I'll offset it a little bit here. Pretty much is going to be accurate. Now this bag is going to have a 4-inch, I'm offsetting it here so you can just see that it is reaching. I'm planning to offset this bag to put about a 4-inch piece in the middle, so it's only going to have about a 2-inch strip at the bottom of the black. And then that's gonna leave all of this higher up. I could decide just to go ahead and cut an inch off of each end of this material and 2 inches, an inch off of each side of the black material underneath, and it would make it a little bit of a shorter bag. So I may do that just because I want more handle space. So actually, that's why I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna change these measurements. I'm gonna end up with 2 of those accent fabrics at 22 by 18 rather than 19. And this is gonna go from 22 to 42. Now, I will just make you'll see, I've seen a note earlier in the video that I'm gonna make those changes, but I want you to see what the process looks like as you realize, as you start to get it and you go, oh, this bag's gonna be quite tall and maybe not have enough handle space. You know, for this bag, I wanna have a little more handle so I can put it maybe over my shoulder or something. That becomes an issue. So the way I fix that, really simple, is I'm going to move these out of the way, move that centerpiece out of the way. I'll go ahead and fold this back in half, and I'm going to line it up along the edge and just cut 1 inch off of the side here. And the reason I'm glad I'm showing this to you this way is I want you to not be afraid to adjust, especially if you run out of fabric and you go, I don't have enough fabric to make new handles after I did the handles that way. So this is now gonna be 42 by 22. And then each of these, I'll do the same thing. And the way I'm gonna do that is line up at 0 on this side, and it's over to 19 on this side. I'll pop that material back, and then I'll just go to the 18 mark on my board underneath, my cutting board mat, and chop off that inch. And if you're making scrappy quilts, save those pieces. I'm not, but if you are. And then see, that makes the handle a little bit longer, and this will turn down a 1/2 inch anyway in the top, so you're gonna get a little bit more. This is still gonna be not really a shoulder bag, it's gonna be a handed bag. You could make longer straps if you were gonna do that, if you're worried about that. One of the ways you could do that would be to cut another piece of the black here and make it wider, make it a bigger piece of black so there's more of the back black on the bottom of this particular bag, and then you could cut more off at this end. You could go more like this type of a thing. You know, and that might look better for this bag, but I'm already this far into it, so this is where we're at. If I were making this bag to use myself every day, I might change it because I think I'd like the idea of a little bit more black on the bottom, or than just 2 inches of black along the bottom edge. All right, so I'm gonna cut this, cut 1 inch off the top. There we go. All right, let's go to the sewing machine. Now I'm gonna use white thread to do this process, and I'm gonna go ahead and stitch all the way up the sides here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put another pin or 2 in. I'm stitching all the way up to about within, I'll go across the top at about 1 inch in. So let me actually mark that properly. 1 inch. And in fact, I'll use some chalk here. That's gonna make this a lot easier if I can find it. So I'll put a pin up at the very top, even though I'm not gonna sew up to there. Same thing over here. I'll put a pin up to the very top. I've just made sure I've lined it up correctly. And at about the 1 inch mark down, I will go ahead and mark that. I'm gonna put my ruler on 1 inch at each other end and just put a mark across this. You'll see, and that's where I'll do my stitching, and that way this will fold out of the way when it's time to stitch the tops. I'm gonna repeat the same process on the other side. 2 things, I'll put the pins in so that it's properly in place. I don't want it going anywhere. And then I'll put my mark on at the 1 inch mark. And again, I'm using a mark on my table underneath. My cutting mat underneath. All right. We're gonna go to the machine and I'm gonna show you stitching these 2 sides down. I'm just gonna go basically up one side, across there, and down the other. Now I'm gonna use a white thread, so it's contrasting. I like the look of it because there's white in the background, but you might wanna use a black thread, just so in case you get wobbly off, you're not seeing it. But I'm gonna use white so you can easily see where I've done all my stitching. Let's go to the machine. All right, so here at the machine, I'm gonna start with the one that has the pocket on it down here. Let me turn my machine on. I'm gonna go to about a 2 on my stitch length, and I'm just gonna come into here and start simply off the edge. And I will just use the width of the presser foot as my guide along the side on this one. I think it'll look nice. And again, I will use my needle up, needle down position on my sewing machine. I'm going kind of slow here. I mean, the truth is I like to fly through my sewing, but I want you to see that I can also be careful. So I will continue up until that line that I drew. Get the needle to drop into it. And I did get a little wavy there, but I don't think anyone's really gonna notice. Now I wanna make sure I put my needle back down where I'm gonna be at the right position because I don't wanna overdo it. There we go. And I'm just gonna go straight down here. I just stuck myself with a pin. Now you'll notice that when I go over this, it's gonna trap that pocket. See, that pocket material is right in here, and it's gonna trap that fabric in. It's also trapping the other layer, the fold of this material. Oh, you can't see it there, hold on. It's trapping the fold of this material because there's 2 folded pieces of material in here. Anyway, I'll show you as I get further down. It's trapping this extra piece of material underneath there. Well, it's the same material, it's just folded over. Now, I just sewed over a needle, and I'm gonna tell you right now that that's actually a big no-no in the sewing world. So if you're new to the sewing world, please don't sew over your needle. I did it because I'm allowed to. It's my house and my rules, but you really shouldn't. You could, especially if you're going fast, you could hit the needle, you could hit the pin with your sewing machine needle and break it off. And since I'm actually not wearing glasses right now, I have my contacts in, this would actually be a little bit dangerous. I probably should be wearing safety glasses while I do this. I'm not. Now I just back stitched at the end here, which you don't really have to do because because it's going to be trapped into a seam anyway, but I did it because I'm just so used to doing it. So you can or can't, it's not required. I'm going to fold this material up a little bit so it doesn't get in the way and push things off my table. I think I already shoved something off my table a minute ago. Again, I'm going to move that out of the way, that pin out of the way. And I'm just making sure everything's laying flat as I do this. Super careful. There we go. And then I'll turn it completely around. I know I didn't want to wipe anything on the back of my table off. Here we go, across. Remember, I gotta stop before I get to the very edge because I gotta be able to turn this and have it line up properly. Oh, and it did, that's great. So now I can go down the other side. Now, if you don't have a presser foot that's even on either side, maybe don't do this. Give you a slightly different angle of this. Go ahead and take off some of these clips and the pin down here at the bottom. All right, and that piece has been done, completely attached. I can go ahead and take all these pins and clips off. Take this last clip off of there. And now I've got that with the pocket in there. Looks great. Take my other pin out of there. And then imagine if you had done this in black thread, you wouldn't even notice it was there. It would be great, but it's fine too, just like this. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to I'm going to go ahead and do the other one exactly like this and get ready to sew on the black piece in the middle. All right, so those are done. Our next step is to go ahead and attach the smaller piece that goes across. So I'm literally just going to place it right on top, and I'll put a few clips in it to hold this in place. And we're gonna basically sew right across all of this. I'll flip it this way so you can see how it's been done now. And I'll place this on and stitch it down. Now I'm using a simple 1/4 inch seam allowance for this. There's no reason to go any bigger unless you just really want to. And I'm just gonna make sure that it lines up as we go down. And you'll see what's happened when we did that. It went ahead and it trapped all of the ends of that into this material. Now, before I go and add the other one, I'm just gonna go ahead and straighten this down and put a top stitch. And what I'll do is push all of this fabric toward the dark side. So you see I can decide which way to flip this material. I'm gonna flip it toward the dark side. So in fact, I can just go on this side and kind of give it a finger press. And because this is only one layer of fabric and I have several layers here with the pocket and the straps. Well, this one doesn't have the pocket. I think the other one does. Either way, it'll be real easy to flip it over. Now you could use your iron for this. It's not necessary. You can just finger press it like this and that should work. But if you want to iron it, you go for it. Now just make sure when you top stitch this, I'm going to go a little bit more. I'm not going to go a full 1/4 inch on the top stitch because I only use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go right at the edge. Sort of at the edge. So it'll capture. Now, if you wanted to look even with what you've already done, I probably should have used a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I could have used the 1/4 inch of the presser foot, and it would have looked a little more even. Yeah, but I'm not doing that now because I've already done this part. I've already messed it up if that was the case. It just depends on what you want. Do you want these to have the same exact seam allowance on both sides? If you do, you'll want to do that. And maybe it would have looked a little bit better, although I think this still looks fine. I'm a fan of it. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I lay this out flat, and I bring the other one directly over the top of it. And they're the same width, so they just line up, you know? They're just going to line up here. Basically, I can line up that material, put my clips in it just to hold it together, and start sewing. Of course, I've pulled the thread out of the needle, so we'll have to fix that. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll open this up and press it toward the dark, finger press that toward the dark, and go in and put a top stitch on this side. All right, let's go back to the table. So here at the table, I've gotten that whole thing laid out. I don't need this anymore, so I'm good there. This piece is laid out, and what I'm going to do is put my handles in. I'm going to kind of get them out of the way. And one of the things you can do is just pin them out of the way so they will leave you alone for the rest of this experience. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a couple pins in it just to keep them out of my hair. The other one, I'll do the same thing. I just want them to leave me alone during this process. Because I won't need them until the very end. So I'm just pinning them out of the way. All right. And then this is the lining. We're going to do this lining separately from the outer part of the bag. And all we have to do now is flip the bag in half, fold it in half. And because I want this to look really good, I'm going to make sure that I line up where these two black pieces go together. So I will make sure that I go in and line those up exactly. And I will even put a pin rather than just a clip on this, because I want to make sure that those do not adjust at all. I want that exactly in there. So that pin goes there, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Basically, I'm going to line up and just make sure that line is properly lining up, and put a pin in that. Ooh. And then the top should line up, but if they don't, you're fine. Don't worry about that, because you really want that black line to line up if you care about this thing being exact as it goes. And you could put some more pins or clips, whatever you want to do. Same thing on this end. Just make sure that I straighten that out and put a pin on this end. And then all we're going to do is stitch down each side of this. Both of those two sides, I'm going to stitch down both of these sides. Here and here. Now I'm going to go ahead right now while I have this in my vision and go ahead and do the same thing with the lining material. And when we line this up, we should be able to put these two together, and they should be just about the same height if I did all my measurements correctly. And they are right at about the same height. Now what you could do is do a little trim, just make sure that they're exactly the same height. And they aren't exactly. I could trim 1/4 of an inch off of the white material. But that's really whatever we decide to do. I'm not worried about it. In fact, it might be better for it not to be on there because we're not gonna worry about it. They're fine. If they don't line up awfully close, then you would need to trim, okay? So you'd want to trim a little bit to make sure that they're pretty darn close. And in this case, I could trim off 1/4 of an inch, but I'm going to turn this thing, and this is going to be the inside, and the outer material needs to go a little bit bigger around, so it's actually going to be fine for it to be this way. So I'm also going to stitch up both sides of this black material, both sides. The fold is down here at the bottom, and I have the two sides. So let's get going on those pieces. Now, and then we'll come back here to show how they go, what the next step is. Now, you may have watched what I'm doing here and think, this looks a little weird. Now, I'm starting at the bottom, by the way, because I want to make sure that I get this lined up exactly first. I'll take the pin out, but I'm going to still hold my finger on there. Now, you may go, I just saw him go up both sides of this, and he did not leave an opening to turn this thing inside out. And you're going to notice that on the lining fabric, I didn't do that either. And that's because we're not going to turn this inside out from a side like you see in many videos. We're actually going to turn it inside out from the top where the handles are. So I've done both of those sides. Now what I need to do is put my little corners in. And my corners are going to be done You can cut them out if you want, but I think that becomes a lot more difficult to deal with. I think what's easier to do is to mark them with a square or something else. And then once you've done that, to go in and open it up, it's going to make a little more sense when I do that. Now, when you mark out corners, you have to make sure that you're marking out the corner from the finished edge, not from the raw edge here, because the finished edge is actually where that stitching line is. So when I put this on here, and let's say I'm going to take out 2 inches of each corner, I can't put the 2 along the edge. I got to put it along the edge where the actual outside fold is going to be. And so you actually want to stitch across this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and draw this on with my chalk. And then when I open this up, now this is actually bigger than I want this finished piece to be. But when I open it up, I'm going to basically line those up together. And you're going to sew across that. Well, I don't actually want to sew that much across that because I don't want this to be I don't want the bag to be 4 inches wide. That's a pretty wide bag for me for what this is going to be. And it will leave very little of this black material in the bottom. So what I'm going to do instead is I will go ahead and flatten this particular piece out so that I get a 90 degree corner here like that. See? Okay. So I'm not going to do it that other direction because I'm not cutting things out. I'm going to angle that like that. And then I'm going to come from the corner and just do a 2-inch mark into the corner. Now, one of the things that you could do would be you've got a 45 degree line there, but that makes no sense on this particular ruler, right? Like it's kind of foolish. I could come in here and just put the line across the top here. I'm going to flip it this way so you can see some numbers. Let me give you a better view of this. Ooh, that's a good view. Wow. Well, it's got to stay there, though. Come on, stay. Stay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I flatten this out. And then I'm going to go put a line right across here. Let's say on the 2-inch line. And I'm going to mark it at 1.5 hitting the point. 1.5 hits the point. So that makes this cutout 1.5 inches. Now let's go ahead and mark it with my chalk. And that's what I'm going to sew right across that 1.5 inch mark. All right, so that one's done, but I'll go ahead and put a pin in it so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. Bam. That's handled. I will do the same thing on the other side. So I will come back to the other side and flatten this out. And one of the ways to make sure it flattens out accurately is to take that seam line there's like a crease line, and make sure that the seam on the back lines up with it straight down through there. Okay, that's great. So I can flip it over and do the same thing I did before, which is put my 2-inch mark right along that stitch line and put the point going through at 1.5 inches. And now I can do the same exact thing I did on the other side. Draw my line across there. These are going to be fantastic. Now, I'm going to put a pin in that as well because I want to make sure it properly doesn't go anywhere. It stays flat just like that. This is where we're going to go back to the table now and put the rest of it, put together the rest of what needs to be put together so we can actually make this work. And it's going to seem very odd when I do it. But first, I'm not going to do these first. I'm going to put the lining in. All right, now I have the lining of the bag, the actual bag here, put together, right? You can see inside. What I've done is gone through and just did the same thing with the points on the lining material, the lining of the bag, but I just didn't draw any lines. I don't need any lines. I just need the pins to hold it in place. Then I've turned it right side out, so I've got the nice pretty edges. See the edge of the seam is right there. I'm going to put this inside the other bag so I can put the right sides touching. So the right side of the outer bag and the right side of the inner bag are going to touch each other. And I'm putting the raw edges toward the top. Now, I have seams to know where to line them up. So I have seams here. I have that folded seam with a bunch of thread sticking out of it. that folded seam right there, right here. And I'm gonna line it up on this edge. Now this is where I am gonna turn this thing inside out. So I have to leave a section, right side out I should say. I have to leave a section open along this. So I can clip this or pin it. I've been using pins mostly today, so I'm gonna pin it. And I'll just go around and put some pins along it as I have it in the right position. Now again, I am gonna leave a section open between the handles so I can easily turn it. And I get back to here where all that seams are, and I'll make sure I line those up as well so that they're properly lined up. Now you just have to remember to leave yourself a space to turn this thing inside out. All right, so now I'm gonna go to the machine and sew all the way around except leaving a section in the middle so I can turn this right side out. I am gonna backstitch here to make sure that it really gets held in, and I'm gonna make sure that all of my fabric is out from underneath the side. I don't wanna accidentally run over the other side of the top of the bag. Now I'm using a generous 1/4 of an inch seam here. I'm actually maybe a little over a 1/4 of an inch, but it's really fine. As long as it's consistent all the way around, I don't think it'll be a problem. Now remember I said I did not box those corners yet? That's because I'm gonna box them together, which is gonna sound really weird, but it's gonna help keep the lining in here with the, it's gonna help keep the lining inside, and it's not gonna flip out so easily. Now I'm coming back to the part where I'm gonna leave that opening, so I'll get here and just backstitch to make sure it's nice and secure. And now I've done that, I've left that opening here that I can put my hand in to be able to birth stuff through, which is great. So, but I don't actually want to birth it yet because I need to pull out the lining. Let me show you at the table. Here at the table, I have all the pins out through the top. I'm going to take these parts here, and I'm going to actually sew them together. I'm gonna do that sewing those together. And I just realized that I put the mark on the wrong side to be able to do that. So I'm gonna transfer that mark again to this side. Okay, I have the mark on this side now, works out great. I gotta do the same thing on the other side, so let me do that over here. I'm gonna ignore the one I had done previously because it's not accurate. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take the lining. You'll see I'm going straight across. As we go straight across, I'm gonna take that lining and put these two pieces together, just like this, so they line up. And then I'm going to transfer my pin that was on the other side through and line those together. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm gonna take the piece that was there, line these two up. I can take the pin out of that. Line these two up, I'm gonna line them right up on top of each other so that they are exactly lined up. And put my pin back through it. I'll take the pin out on the other one side. Then all I have to do is sew across these lines, and that'll connect the outer fabric to that lining fabric, and then I'll be able to turn the whole thing inside out. Let's go to the sewing machine. All right, you don't have to do yours this way. You could just box each of these corners the same way, and they would be just fine. It would just be that the lining would be a little loose in there. That's not a problem. Take that pin off. You don't want that in there anymore. And now we've boxed across both of those. Same thing on the other side. Here's the other one. Flip it out. We can sew across it. All right, let's go turn this thing the rest of the way inside out. So I actually get a lot of grief sometimes when I say turn inside out, when I really mean turn right side out. So I'm gonna turn it right side out. So I just have to find the part in the middle where I had left an opening. So I'm gonna go around to that seam, and that's what I have right here. So I can now turn this whole thing right side out. Now I'm gonna be real careful because I have pins in there where I wanted to keep my straps out of the way. So I will be real careful as I do that. Now I still have to finish stitching those straps down, and I've got to stitch all the way across the top of them, but I'll finish that in just a minute. So I'm again turning this whole thing inside out, right side out, I should say. And now that's done. That's birthed itself. Take those pins out of the straps. And now we have a bag that has opened up, and you'll see I can't pull the lining all the way out because it's attached down at these corners here, down in the bottom corners. It's attached, which is great because it'll pull itself inside out. All right, so what I'm gonna do is get this right side out. Again, I have to say it correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and get these corners down here pointed, turn that. Now you see I like how this is at the bottom, but I think I might have liked a little longer amount. This is actually a pretty big bag, and here's that pocket on the side. Great place for a cell phone. So what I'm gonna do is I've got to fold the top over, and I will press this with my iron and get a nice flat crease all the way around, because I'm gonna top stitch all of that. And then I'm gonna come back and top stitch these handles all the way across. So let me get my pressing mat out, and we'll go from there. Here's my pressing mat. Flip it over this way. Give you a little better view, closer up. I have this cool arm that I really can't show you right now that I iron with because I'm using it. Not that I iron with, that I film with. I can't show it to you right now though because I'm filming with it. So I won't do that. But maybe one day I'll show you my filming setup in my office. So what I'm doing is I am flattening that out so it's nice and flat across. I don't want either of the materials really showing through the other side. And then I will use my press. Now remember what I said, these handles are a little short. This is not gonna be an over your shoulder bag, really. So, you know, you may want to adjust yours if you really want that that way. And then I will open it up a little bit here and do the same thing. I'm really liking this bag, actually. I like these colors together is what I should say. I really like the contrast of the black and the white and red and gray. It's got like a gray in it that I really like. All right, I'm getting close to being done with that part. Like I said, I do have to stitch the handles to finish them. All right. This isn't a beginner's bag. All right, so I finished that part. Let's go stitch that around the top, and then we'll finish the handles and be done. All right, I'm gonna top stitch from the red side so I can see it. I will use about 1/4 of an inch, not quite a full 1/4 of an inch seam. I didn't use a full 1/4 of an inch seam. I'm gonna start behind one of the handles because it will be easy to cover. The handle's gonna come up and cover that. And because you're not gonna see this on the outside really, because it's a white material and I'm stitching white thread, then it really matters mostly what you'll see on the inside. And again, you'll see that stitching line on the inside. Again, just keep your handles out of it so you don't stitch over your handles. It matters most in that part between the handles where I have an opening that I have to close up, which was on the other side. So I think I may have hit it already. Yeah, I had already closed that up here, and that got closed fine, so we're good. All right, our last step is gonna be to finish these handles. And what I'm gonna do with that is put it right back under the machine here and start at that edge and you could do two things. You could just finish the stitch off there and come back. But I like the idea of going back at that angle, at that place where I had already, so what I wanna do is, this is gonna sound a little weird, but I don't wanna go and touch exactly to that. I wanna go next to it. So I'm gonna leave a little bit of space like this, and you'll see when I finish what this does. And then I'm just gonna sew right off of the material. And I'm using that presser foot as the edge along the black, just like I did when I sewed it down. And I run out of bobbin. Of course I did. All right, let me refill my bobbin and then we'll get back to this. Sometimes I get lucky and the bobbin just doesn't run out until I'm done with the entire project, which is usually nice. I mean, have you ever had that happen where the bobbin waits like right until your last stitch and then you're like, oh, the bobbin just ran out. Yeah, it's a nice problem to have. Well, it's not gonna look so great on this particular piece because right in the middle of the handle is gonna be a bobbin switch. But you know what? You could rip all the stitching out if you wanted and start again. This is gonna be something I use at the grocery store occasionally. I'm not worried about it. All right, so let me flatten that out. Now, when I get down to this end, what I'm gonna do is to not go all the way to it. Remember, I'm gonna give it a little bit of space and then come across there. And then we'll go back up. See how that worked out? Okay, now we're gonna go back. Now I gotta make sure I flatten all this out to come back to. And there we go, we got that. Now it kind of looks like a little design feature rather than having to figure that out at the last second. I'll just do the same thing on the other one and then we'll be finished. And the bag is finished. I just have to do a few things to adjust it. I'm gonna have to do a few, like, I'll just press it probably. It's actually a much bigger bag than I expected it to be. But it looks pretty cute. Nice pocket on the side. I could have top stitched along that pocket, which maybe I should have done, would give it a little bit of a nicer look. But it looks pretty darn good. It's a big bag too. This actually bag ended up being 21 almost. Well, that's, I gotta cut that off. Hold on. These threads annoy me. Okay, this bag ended up being, I should do it at the little gussets at the bottom. 18 by 19, just about. So a good size square. All right, let me show it to you. Well, actually, you can see that armature right here. Isn't that kind of cool? This is my arm for, anyway, we'll get that out of the way. Here is the finished bag, and I went ahead and put a bunch of stuff in it. It's super strong, actually, because it's lined in that way. It does have that pocket place for you to put like a phone or other items. Maybe you can have your Tim Holtz little cutter from my my Amazon haul video in there. Ooh, let's shove that in there. And I went ahead and put a whole bunch of stuff inside. Like, it's actually really, really big inside. I got a lot of stuff in there. I could probably get quite a lot of groceries. I'm glad I reinforced the handles here at the top. Now, maybe if this had been used with some stabilizer, maybe it would be a little bit better in terms of the overall like strength of the bag, to give it a little more like, what's the right word? Like heft, or like it could stand up on its own. But frankly, I don't think I want a bag like this to stand up on its own. I want to be able to throw a bunch of stuff in it and have it fit the size of the bag of the stuff that I put in it. So I like that a little bit better. I do think I'll be putting this in my car and using it as a grocery bag. I'm gonna take all the stuff out from the inside because I want to show you sort of the way how it's completely lined. You could also, somebody had said on the live video I did talking about what I was going to do here, that they would like to have a pocket on the inside. You certainly could do that. You could add that just like we did the pocket on the outside, maybe a little bit differently. But so here we go on the inside, completely lined in there. And what I like about it is there's no stitch in there showing where the stitching was done. You could turn it inside out if you wanted. I think that would be a little weird. And I've just collected every piece of string that I could have. But because we boxed those corners the way we did, connecting the lining with the outer, I'm not worried about this lining getting pulled out or anything, you know, at any point. It's stuck in there. Now you could have also, you could create a piece of, maybe cut a piece of plastic, like a yard sign or something, and put it in the bottom and make like a nice solid bottom, but I don't think that's necessary either. So that's a really lovely bag. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me make it. Maybe you'll make some of them your own. You can definitely do different sizing if you want. You don't have to make it this big. This is actually a pretty big bag. I didn't think about how large it would be. But you know, hey, I can buy a lot of groceries, you know? So until next time, folks, stay crafty. Bye for now. Great, well, I do have to go grocery shopping, so let's test it out.